At the start of the part 2, a woman gives birth to a baby aboard the spaceship. This is a historic achievement as the feat was never achieved before in mankind history. Later, the entire passengers and the crew gather in the hall to celebrate the occasion. Iris and Karen announce that the baby is a healthy boy, who was born exactly at 11 a.m. Meanwhile, as Captain Clark and Billy are listening to the announcement, they hear a continuous beep sound coming from somewhere. Assuming that it is bad news, they immediately set off to find the source of it. A few hours later, the two have searched the entire spaceship, but yet they cannot find the source. Just then, a guy approaches them and acts like he knows a great deal about science and spaceships. He then explains that the sound is actually coming from the oxygen supply department because they are running out of oxygen. Hearing this, Clark and Billy are shocked, and they immediately cover their mouths to conceal the truth from the other passengers. After a while, they reveal the devastating news to Karen and Iris, and the two are also equally shocked and terrified by the news. Meanwhile on Earth, Rav talks to the President of the United States and convinces him to provide funds for the rescue mission. However, in order for the mission to commence, she also has to convince the other president. After a while, she is led into a room, and when her turn comes, a robotic figure speaks from the other end. It promises to give her funds, but only if 500 non-essential personnel are thrown out from Avenue 5. This puts Rav in a very tough situation. Back in Avenue 5, Judd and the crew members hold a meeting about the new oxygen problem. Realizing that they may die if they aren't careful, all of them decide to restrict the usage of oxygen by not laughing, not exercising, not coughing, and not screaming. Moreover, from now on, everyone will have to talk very softly. After a while, Rav calls them and informs them of the good news, that they have got government funding. She also mentions that they have been ordered to chuck out 500 NEPs from the ship. However, she continues by saying that she flat out rejected the offer. Unfortunately, the people on the ship didn't hear her last sentence, and only heard the part where they have to eject 500 NEPs. Because of this, panic ensues among the crew members, and some passengers even listen in on it. But Captain Clark assures that as long as he is in charge, no one is getting chucked out. Meanwhile, the ever-so-mischievous has a new idea in mind to entertain his passengers. He wants to light up the floating excrement with lasers. After he's done with the preparations, he also goes live and announces to everyone that they are running low on oxygen. Hence, he lays down the rules and orders all the passengers to restrict the usage of oxygen as much as they can. Later, some of the enraged passengers approach Captain Clark's office and demand answers. Unfortunately, during the chaos, they also hear the rumor that 500 NEPs will be ejected soon. Things get really heated up, but just then, Billy arrives with some good news. She reveals that the beeps are not because they are running low on oxygen. It is in fact due to the birth of the new child. The ship is telling them to recalibrate the baby. Hearing this, everyone breathes a sigh of relief for a while, but soon, they again start turning on the captain for his devious plan of evicting people. But before things can escalate, Judd releases his lasers and lights up the turd space. Now, the excrement orbiting them looks beautiful, and everyone, including Captain Clark, is mesmerized. Later, as everyone is staring at the glowing turd, a daunting guy called Harrison barges in. As soon as Judd sees him, he turns around and walks away, as if he is scared of him. Captain Clark finds the whole thing funny and asks Iris about it, and gets to know that Harrison is a trillionaire who is angry at Judd for his failed space mission. Now, he is planning to sue Judd Galaxies, which would virtually bankrupt the company. The entire day, Judd and Harrison keep clashing into one another, making up a tense situation between the two. Elsewhere on Earth, people get wind of the idea of evicting 500 NEPs to save the others, not realizing that it was approved. They start blaming Rav for the entire thing. Some of them even hold protests and hurl death threats at her. Back in Avenue 5, Billy calls Clark to her workplace and reveals something. She explains that before they took off, Joe took handprints of Clark for a specific reason. It was actually to dock the ship after their 8-week journey. But now that Joe is dead, Clark will have to learn how to dock the spaceship so that they can safely return to Earth in 3.5 years' time. Hearing this, Captain Clark is taken aback, but he has no choice but to start learning the extremely difficult process. Later, while the two are upstairs, an idea suddenly strikes Billy's idea. She deduces that they don't have to throw 500 people to reduce the duration to reach Earth. They can simply lessen that equivalent amount of weight. All they have to do is throw the weight from the rear trap so that the spaceship can be propelled. Clark loves the idea and announces it to everyone. This makes all the passengers, and even Judd, hopeful. Elsewhere on Earth, the US government is about to launch a spaceship to help Avenue 5 with some food stocks and medical supplies. Rav, who has been terrified with death threats, sneaks inside the spaceship at the last second and heads to Avenue 5. Her plan is to reach the spaceship and bring Judd back with her. But to her dismay, the captain reveals that if Judd returns on the flight to Earth, then she will have to stay back in Avenue 5, as there is only one seat in this flight. In the next scene, as per the captain's orders, all the passengers begin collecting items that they don't need. Some decide to throw away their clothes, some their guitars, and some even want to throw their pet rabbits. The person in charge of the selection is none other than Karen. Meanwhile, Captain Clark is in the control room with Billy, learning how to dock the spaceship. Since he has no idea about science, he does pretty badly in his first attempts. Looking at his progress, Billy and Cyrus assume that it will take more than 4 years for him to learn the entire thing perfectly. After a while, when Clark heads upstairs, he is confronted by Judd for being bad at work. One thing leads to another and the two get into a verbal argument. Judd, who is clearly not satisfied with the captain's work, tries to fire him. But before he could do that, Clark quits himself. He takes off his wig and reveals his bad head to everyone. At this point, all the passengers also learn that he is not a real captain, but just a paid actor. With his departure, Judd assigns an old guy as the captain. However, the decision turns out to be bad. The captain enters the control room and straight away learns that all the crew members are also paid actors. None of them know anything about the spaceship and keep repeating the same thing over and over again. Enraged, he goes straight to Judd and the other passengers and reveals to them about it, causing further chaos. One of the passengers questions if there is anything real about the place after all, while another asserts that they are not even in space, but in a simulation. Hearing this, all the passengers start chanting, "Let us out." At this point, they are willing to go out of the airlock and see the truth for themselves. Clark, who is without his wig, tries making them understand that they are actually in space. He also asserts that they will die the moment they step out of the airlock, but no one listens to them. Even the arrogant trillionaire, Harrison, joins the angry mob and demands being let out. Right then, the head of customer relations, Matt Spencer, arrives there and gives them the code to the airlock. However, he tries to make the passengers understand in their own language. He explains that they are actually in a simulation, and that all of this is fake. If they walk out of the airlock, they will die in the simulation. But the problem is that they will also die in real life. This convinces the passengers for a while, but soon, they again start protesting. They then rush to the airlock and open the gate with the passcode given by Matt. One of the passengers quickly enters, despite Clark's best attempts to stop him. Then, in the blink of an eye, he freezes to death. However, the stupid passengers still think it is a part of the game, and assume that it is just VFX. Hence, 6 more passengers enter the airlock, and freeze to death one after another. Among them is also the trillionaire Harrison. The rest of the passengers finally realize that they are in space when the last person to freeze inside the airlock hits the walls, and breaks her arms off. Because of the incident, Clark reinstates himself as the captain again while Matt becomes devastated and starts blaming himself for the entire incident. He then decides to isolate himself for the entirety of the remaining 3.5 years. But before going, he changes the passcode of the airlock. This means that now, no one can come in or go out of the spaceship. Not even the non-essential items can be disposed of without the airlock. Realizing this, Clark and the others go into a state of panic. They quickly set out to find him in groups, and Clark is paired up with the person he dislikes the most, Judd. However, while the two are searching for Matt, they surprisingly start bonding and make a good team. At the same time, Rav finally reaches the spaceship and gets taken aback to find that 11 people have already died. Meanwhile, Clark and Judd finally locate Matt. He is in a miserable state, eating chocolate since hours. Soon, Rav arrives at the scene and slaps Judd for being a total psychopath and jeopardizing the mission. The others also arrive, and because of the stress, Matt finally gives up the code to the airlock. As everyone is busy talking, they realize that Judd is already gone. It turns out he is headed to the rocket ship brought by Rav to fly back to Earth. The others also arrive there, but it's too late for them. Judd has already entered and is on his way home. However, when Rav and the others mention that the people on Earth will kill him for the decisions he has made here, he immediately gets off. At last, everyone vetoes Captain Clark to return home because of all the hard work and sacrifices he has put up so far. However, when he gets in, he realizes that he has to stay and dock the Avenue 5, as only he has the handprint for it. So, he too returns. Sensing the opportunity, the stand-up comedian from earlier, Jordan, gets in, but Iris quickly follows him and evicts him out. Unfortunately, before she can get out as well, the doors get locked. Now, she has to fly back to Earth, leaving her boss, Judd, alone. In the last scene, Karen finally ejects the non-essential materials. However, after she completes the job, she mentions that she did it from the front door, as the rear one was a bit small. Hearing this, Captain Clark and Billy are shocked, because the whole point of the thing was to get propulsion energy. Now that they have evicted tons of stuff from the front, They have been propelled backwards, which is further going to change Avenue 5 Second's trajectory. The episode ends as Cyrus steps forward and reveals that now, the approximate time for them to reach Earth is 8 years. Subscribe to see more videos like this, turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.